The Palo Alto Network's firewall and GlobalProtect concepts, getting down, well, deep and dirty, I guess, into the SSL VPN side, and things that we can do to actually extend all of our protections down to users, down to satellite offices, and basically throughout the entire organization. So, when a lot of people, we'll call the internet over here, I guess. And we'll just say that these are going to be remote users at this point. We have a lot of times where, our users, because you and I both see this all the time, where our users are out in the field. They may have just laptops and stuff coming in over God knows whatever, so, may or may not have their own firewalls. Or they could have their own home office that we send out a small firewall to. We do all sorts of different configurations like this all the time. Well, interestingly enough, Palo Alto has a nice and easy way to enforce these policies, or really to roll out policies, I guess would be a better way of putting it, to kind of maintain control from a central location on all my users or, say, home offices. I'll kind of put this down here. As you will, so little different things, or even satellite offices for that matter. So GlobalProtect allows me to expand the reach of my security. So I have my control right over here, however many firewalls that I happen to have in my central organization, but leaves me kind of a, logical sense of control as far as you go for things. Users can stay connected, stay protected, just as if they really never left the internal part of my office here. Nice thing is, this will work with Windows devices, it'll work with Apple devices, it'll work with some other varieties of things like Android OS and iOS as well. And probably coming up with new expanded things all the time. So we won't say that that's a final list of things. But basically, we can still employ and enforce application controls, user controls, content policies, all the types of things that we have. We now have a host profile that we add into this mix. Now, interesting things, we can also do stuff to check on disk encryption, to check on host operating systems, they're patched, patched OSs, antivirus, anti-malware, both the state and the version. So I suppose I may as well write these things down for you. I can check on encryption. We'll say disk right here. I can check on OS patches. Check on antivirus. That includes anti-spyware, malware, and stuff like that. Both the software and version. I can check on my host-based firewall. Whether it's operational and what its state happens to be. I can also check the version of it as well. Let's see, I can check on data backup, and this is limited to which operating systems it is. When was the last time that a backup took place? I can check on, we'll just call it custom stuff. Okay, so I can use this to do things like check on registry keys, check on specific software, if we've got custom applications, what version they happen to have, all sorts of different things that I can push down to the host level in order to do that. Now, keep in mind, so GlobalProtect is an agent. So it is software loaded on a user's machine. It will access the portal that we have configured. It will authenticate, so we can do Active Directory, Radius, etc., stuff like that. But then download the agent and profile as necessary. Once that profile or this agent gets connected, then it's going to get all of its information there. Okay, so we send all the information to the client agent. So that'll be things like my gateways, my list of gateways. In my graphic right here, of course, I'm only going to have one of them, but you get the idea. Larger organizations, we may have more than one, maybe geographically dispersed like that. I'll have things like my trusted CAs, any client certificate if I'm going to push that information down, any what we call a HIP or a host information profile, okay, which tells it how it's going to protect things like that in there. May also be able to enforce, by the way, we'll say VPN client list, okay, which third-party VPN clients are going to be allowed or not, and then things like agent settings. Now this, by the way, is another thing that's good to do in a GPO. So part of your Windows logon procedures, stuff like that, assuming you're running Windows, because it'll make things simple to roll out in an unattended process, especially larger organizations. That's a huge deal. Once we get the agent installed, the user cannot uninstall it. So that's going to be kind of a big difference as far as how we're looking at things or how they're going to be handled. You know, once it's on, they can't disable it, which is good because that's the way that we want things to be. Okay. Now, connection-wise, and kind of keep the view that we have here for a second, but I'm going to clear this all off and show the connection sequence that we would go through from both a user or satellite office standpoint. Okay. All right. So as we get in here, my location discovery, of course, is where I happen to be at, but that's going to tell me, once I'm configured, whether I'm going to go to an internal gateway or an external gateway. Now, difference, of course, is whether things have to be done via a VPN or not. All of the information that is going to be transmitted in here, so from my agent, is going to be encrypted. So it kind of does that part all automatically. But basically, an attempt is made to connect to every external gateway that's available. So whichever one that's out there, and basically we'll go to which one responds first. So it'll have the list, and it's just simply based on response time, like I said, and priority, I guess we could put in there as well, as far as understanding what one I'm going to be talking to. So picture this from a traveling the world standpoint. If I'm going around, and perhaps I'm typically based in North America, and so I may have my offices in California and New York and perhaps Texas as well. So kind of just pick a few things around there. And then I also go over to the European Union. And so I'll be in London and Paris and Amsterdam, because Amsterdam's a whole lot of fun. Okay, so beyond that, but anyway, so those are all the ones that I'm going to have, and they be configured in my settings, and I'll go ahead and send out probes to all of them and figure out how it's who's going to respond back and how it's going to be faster. Typically, we would think if I'm in North America, those three would go faster, and if I'm in Europe, these three would go faster. Doesn't always work that way. There's a lot of funky things. The way the internet works is amazing sometimes, but you may or may not have that. So I could say this is my preferred connection, give it a higher priority than the European ones. So that way I'll go with these, try these three first, or try these, and even if it's close, then I'll go ahead and go with that. Lots of things that I can do to control where I choose to end up. This may also make a difference policy-wise, because the rules, the laws in North America may be different than whatever other country that you happen to be in. So lots of reasons that we kind of go down that path for allowing our users to roam all over the place or travel all over the place. But anyway, that's kind of beside the point. So as we go through, we make this connection on here. If there's internal connections or internal gateways, if I'm inside the organization based on my IP addresses, then I actually make simultaneous connections to all of them. Okay, so not just the one that responds fastest, but to all of them. So that way it gives me the best control or best balancing, I guess, between the firewalls, if you will, for seeing what's going to go on. Firewalls themselves, so this guy right up here, can also be a GlobalProtect client. So this gets into my home office type scenario. Okay? So I can do things really kind of the same way that will relay the profiles, relay the reporting information in there. Satellite offices will connect to portals, will connect to gateways and stuff like that, receiving the information just like the user would down here. So we'll say the user or satellite. So it kind of gives an idea for how that's going to work. Configuration in here, by the way, is going to be under the network and IPsec tunnels, and simply select GlobalProtect Satellite. It's honestly all you have to do on the configuration of your remote device at that point. And otherwise, it'll look just like any other IPsec deployment, but nice part is we don't have to worry as much about the policies, because by setting that and saying that we're a GlobalProtect satellite, we're making control back to the central location. Okay, so all the satellites will register with the portal, and then they're administratively tracked by serial number for what they're going to have going on. So it's kind of a cool way to do that. GlobalProtect, like I said, we're only going into the concepts on this because it's not a major part of the exam. You may find that you want to roll this out, and that's great, but it's kind of above and beyond where we want to look at for both the ACE or the CNSE. I would be familiar with it, but you won't need to have to configure it specifically on there. So we've gone through a few things as far as rolling out my global protection from both a client, we'll call this an agent, and from a satellite office, which is a firewall perspective. So two different ways that I have to look at things. All of my traffic, like I said, between the agents or the offices back to the central locations are going to be encrypted, so it kind of makes my life a little bit simpler that way. Configuration, everything that we did, like we said on there, is going to be under my network and IPsec tunnel, and then just set the GlobalProtect satellite from a firewall standpoint anyway. Client agent is just install it and it will find the information on there. So that pretty much covers it for what we need to know. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.